Hi Girl Scouts, it's Kaylee from Kampikawa and I hope you're enjoying Wild West Week. This week for Storytime we're going to be reading a section from the Desert Challenge, part of the Bear Grylls Adventures series. I chose this book because in the time of the Wild West, a lot of those happenings were occurring in part of the US where there's a lot of desert land, so I thought this book would be particularly appropriate. Our book follows a girl called Sophie who's away at summer camp herself. And when we pick up from our extract, she's currently competing in a relay race on the yellow team against the red team. A fun fact you should know about Sophie, she's very scared of bugs. Kind of like Kaylee. The zip wire buzzed as she hurled along it. The red boy was just behind her. Sophie grinned as the air rushed past her head. She could win this. About a quarter of the way across the pit, she felt something shift in her pocket. The baton was about to fall. She quickly took one hand off the pole so that she could push it back into her pocket. She didn't want to lose it and have to start again. But instead of the baton, her fingertips touched something flat. Of course, she remembered. It was the compass, the one that weird boy had given her. She was about halfway across the pit, right over the deepest bit. Something glinted in the air in front of her. She had half a second to see it. It was a single strand of spider's web shining in the sun, coming straight at her face. Sophie shrieked the loudest shriek ever and tried to twist on the pole to dodge it. She only had one hand on the pole, but she panicked and let go, waving it frantically in front of her face to push the web away. The compass and baton went flying through the air. She tried to grab at the pole again, but her body was twisting and turning, and her fingers bounced off the metal. She was going to fall. Everything seemed to be happening in slow motion. The compass spun in the air in front of her eyes. She could see a north, south, east and west, and a fifth direction? The dial seemed to grow bigger as it flew closer to her face. In fact, she seemed to be falling through the dial. Sophie ploughed face first into the sand and ended up with a mouthful of the stuff. Bleh! The sand was dry and gritty and disgusting. She spat it out. Honestly, she thought furiously, what kind of idiot can't even sit on a zip wire? She'd never felt so hot and embarrassed. It was all that stupid spider's fault. But she was really hot? Her eyes were still screwed tight shut to keep the sand out, but the sun seemed extra bright. So bright that there was a red glow through her eyelids. Sophie brushed the sand carefully away from her face before opening her eyes. For some reason, she couldn't hear any of the other campers. Perhaps she had sand in her ears too. She knew everyone would be laughing at her, except Omar, who would just be angry. She opened her eyes, and suddenly a very bright light flooded in. Ow! She exclaimed. She squeezed her eyes tight shut again, and then opened them a crack, slowly. And then her eyes grew wide. She realized why she couldn't hear the others. It was because they weren't there. She wasn't in the sand pit at camp. But she was standing in sand. It was smooth and yellow, miles and miles of it. A desert, all the way to the horizon. The air shimmered in the baking heat. She jumped when a man's voice spoke right behind her. Hey, get over here, before the sun bakes your brains out. Sophie turned around in surprise. A couple of rocks and a very tired-looking palm tree stuck out of the sand behind her. The tree cast a shadow about the size of a tablecloth, and that was where the man was sitting, with his rucksack next to him. His tanned face was pleasant and friendly. Desert temperatures can get up to more than 50 degrees centigrade, he added. Come into the shade. Despite the talk about baking her brains out, his voice sounded calming. Sophie still had no idea how she got here, but the desert heat was inside her as well as out. Every breath of scorching air made her lungs glow. She peeled her hoodie off and went towards the shade. The man sat quietly, looking out at the shimmering desert. The sky was bright blue, without a cloud in it. The horizon was a long way away. Eventually, Sophie asked, "Where am I?" Well, It looks like you're on a journey." He paused, then looked straight at her. "And I'm here to help you." Then he looked away into the far distance. Sophie was puzzled. "A journey to where?" she asked. The man pointed at the horizon. "Out of the desert," he said, with a smile. "Ready for some real adventure?" Sophie looked around at the baking sands. No sign of any kind of transport. "You mean walk?" "That's right." This was the weirdest thing that had ever happened to Sophie. But the man didn't seem surprised to see her, and he said he wanted to help her get back. She knew she couldn't do it on her own, so she decided to trust him. She looked down at the clothes she had been wearing for the race: hoodie, t-shirt, and shorts. "Well, I guess I'm dressed for the beach," she said lightly. He frowned. No. Your skin's too exposed. You want something light and loose enough for the air to circulate next to your skin to cool you down, but strong enough to stop the desert wind peeling your skin off your body. Here." He rummaged in his rucksack and pulled out a long-sleeved shirt, a pair of tough cotton trousers, and some boots, like his, all in her size. Then he turned his back so she should get changed. "Looks like you were somehow prepared for me to be here," Sophie asked. "Your journey has been calling for a while, I suspect," he replied. Sophie didn't reply. She didn't really know what he meant. When she was changed, Sophie asked, "So when do we start walking?" She wasn't really looking forward to this. It was so hot and dry, she couldn't imagine how they'd ever manage it. "What does the sky tell you?" he asked. She looked up again. The sun wasn't high up. The horizon was starting to turn red like sunset. It must be close to evening, she guessed. "So, we wait until the morning?" He smiled. "We start now. It's too hot to walk while the sun's so strong in the midday heat, so we travel at the start and end of the day. I've been waiting here since this morning. Here, take a drink before we get going." He passed over a battered leather water bottle. "Take small mouthfuls," he told her. "Hold them in your mouth to let them soak in, then swallow." "Thank you, She had just realised she didn't know his name. "I'm Sophie," she said as she took the bottle. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Bear." So if you want to continue the story and see how Sophie and Bear get along in the desert, as well as learning some valuable survivor lessons, then check out the Bear Grylls Adventures, The Desert Challenge. Thank you for joining us for Storytime, and I'll see you soon. Bye!